Hey guys, this is part 27 of the story. In this story, our favorite blonde is the wielder of Rinnegan, who also happens to be the Six Path Sage's reincarnation. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share with your friends. Now, let's begin. Few days later, Konoha. The Senju compound was in a somber mood. And Naruto was even worse. His Uchiha side was coming out and he was moping around in the corners and mostly snapping at anyone around. Everyone was in the living room waiting for Jiraiya. Well, everyone was waiting. Naruto was just pacing around in the middle of the room, hands behind his back and a scowl on his face. Where the hell is he? Naruto asked loudly, waving his arms for good measure, but no one replied to him. They knew he would snap at anyone who said anything, regardless of the answer. His waiting was cut short when the door opened and Jiraiya strolled inside with a disappointed look. Naruto rushed towards the man and quickly asked, "Where is she?" Jiraiya looked at him sadly. Naruto was looking at him with eyes filled with hope, and it broke his heart to answer. "I'm sorry, Naruto," Jiraiya said, dropping his eyes. "I couldn't find her." "Why you couldn't?" Naruto whispered. The words from Jiraiya finally settled in and he felt his stomach drop. All this waiting he had done, waiting for Jiraiya to return with her whereabouts, all this time, wasted. "What do you mean you couldn't find her?" Naruto asked, his voice just above the whisper. His head snapped upwards with a furious gaze. "You have a spy network that stretches halfway through the fucking globe and you can't find one woman?" Naruto snarled, gripping Jiraiya by his clothes and bringing him the man to his eye level. Ninja Naruto was about to use his human path and scan through Jiraiya's memories when he felt a hand land on his shoulders. He turned his head ever so slightly, his hair parting away and revealing but a fraction of his silver eyes to the man behind him. "That is enough," Minato said sternly, but Naruto only chuckled. It wasn't a warm chuckle filled with happiness, but a cold and hollow one. Minato himself felt a small shiver crawling up his spine at hearing such sound from his son's voice. The laugh seemed so cold, so cruel, so empty. "Dendo, Shinra Tensei," Naruto intoned with a smirk. Minato only had time to stare at his son in shock until he felt an invisible mountain crash against him. He was lifted off the ground and blasted backwards, crashing against the walls, not very far away. Minato left a small indentation as he slid to the floor, dazed. "Naruto!" everyone shouted, can't believing that he had attacked his own father. Naruto's attention snapped back towards Jiraiya, who gulped and simply stared at Naruto with the Rinnegan activated. "You wouldn't lie to me, Jiraiya? Would you?" Naruto asked, his voice turning deadly. Jiraiya had never seen this side of Naruto. He never knew that Naruto could be so vicious, cruel. Kushina for her part had enough of this and was time to put her foot down. Naruto was about to blast whoever placed a hand on his shoulder when he was pulled and swiftly turned around. A loud slap echoed through the room. Naruto was staring at his mother in no small amount of surprise as he felt his right cheek already swelling and turning red. "Now you listen to me, young man. I may have not been here to raise you, but I will still smack you if you need it," Kushina began harshly. "Your wife was kidnapped because of you. You're childish, stubborn, arrogant and have too much power for your own good. You think you can solve the world's problems by throwing your power around?" Kushina shouted in a furious tone, poking his chest with a single finger. "Well, you can't. You are not a god, and you certainly do not rule this world." Threatening the Tsuchikage with war, saying you will take the last Baijiu from Kumo. What is wrong with you? This is not how the world works. If you ask me, Madara did us all a favor and took you down a peg, Kushina said, making everyone's eyes widen. "Ever since you got your little Rinnegan you have been going around with your chin up, praising to be God Almighty, but you are not. And a word of advice," Kushina said, lowering her tone. "If you are not careful, you might one day lose her too. Now go cool off," Kushina finished and pushed him out. Naruto said nothing and simply walked of the compound. "That was a little harsh," Kushina Tsunade said, helping a groaning Minato of the floor. Minato didn't seem to bear any external injuries. The man just seemed to be dazed as he was looking at seemingly nowhere. He needed it. "It's the parents' job to discipline their children," Kushina huffed, hands on her waist as she walked towards her husband. With Naruto. Naruto strolled around Konoha aimlessly. The village was buzzing with activity, but Naruto didn't seem particularly interested in anything. His mother's words still ringing around in his ears. Was it my fault? Naruto wondered, looking at the sky. It was a clouded night, not a single star visible, not even the moon. "Hey Naruto." Naruto turned to the source of the voice and found himself in front of the ramen stand. "Ramen for dinner?" Pucci asked hopefully. "Not hungry. Thanks anyway, old man," Naruto replied solemnly and moved on. Tucci was surprised by Naruto refusing ramen, but the look on his face said all that he needed. Maybe if I give him the baijuo. Don't you dare, Kurama snarled from his mind, making Naruto flinch. Is that it? You would give us to him just for her? Kurama asked sharply, his tails waving. He kinda understood what Naruto was going through. He, as well, had grown fond of the girl. She's my love, my wife, my queen, Naruto said sadly, walking like a goose through the crowded streets. I would do anything for her. Even sacrificing a friend? Kurama asked softly. Naruto said nothing and continued walking, hands deep in his pockets and his head down, the hair clouding his vision of everything but the ground. What am I supposed to do? I have all this power. I can create and destroy moons, but I can't even find one woman. Some god I am. Naruto thought bitterly, kicking a stray piece of rock away. She can be anywhere in the world. She can be hurt, dying, and here I am, walking around in the village. Naruto walked a little more and soon found himself on top of the Hokage mountain, overlooking the village. He kinda resented the village. They were all happy and cheery. Rain? Naruto muttered, feeling a drop of water land on his face and slide down his cheek. He looked up as rain started pouring from the sky and watched as the people ran around, trying to escape the rain. You were always with me since the very beginning, Naruto began. You were the first person to show me kindness and love. You were my first friend, my girlfriend, and now my greatest love. You were there when I was feeling alone and lost. You were there when I was called a monster, and you were there when I was thrown from stores and feeling lonely. There is nothing I wouldn't do for you, so, Hinata, will you marry me? Naruto asked as he displayed his ring for her to see. You are such a knucklehead, Hinata replied lovingly, and making Naruto hesitantly raise his head to look at her. Of course I do, Hinata lovingly replied, and Naruto immediately got a smile that threatened to split his face. He slowly took the ring from his box and tried to place it on her finger. Naruto let out a scream of pure anguish. He dropped to his knees, his voice being carried in the wind. The few who heard the scream felt a shiver crawl up their spines, in both fear and sorrow. Naruto picked a few rocks and crushed them with his hands. Madara, he snarled, his eyes glowing so much that a few rocks around him started levitating. When I get my hands on you, not even a Shinigami will save you, Naruto growled with conviction. A thunder lighting the sky as the words left his mouth. Darkness. When everything that you know and love is taken away from you so harshly. All you can think about is anger, hatred, and even revenge. And no one can save you. Kurama muttered, and Naruto gave a hollow chuckle. It was one of father's favorite sayings, Kurama informed him. I'm not going dark, Naruto said, swallowing hard, his throat dry from the previous shout. I'm just so angry. I can feel it bubbling inside of me, just waiting to be unleashed. I just want to lash out and destroy everything around me, Naruto explained and sat down on the mountain, the rain pouring down, but he didn't seem to mind. The rain reminded him of her. Naruto sighed and watched his breath leaving his mouth. Temperature started dropping as frost left his mouth, like a cloud of smoke. He inwardly felt a chill run up his spine as a presence manifested itself behind him. It was different from chakra, it felt like pure, raw, unaltered spiritual energy. Death, Naruto whispered, still looking at the sky. Have you come for me? He asked softly. You have an inflated sense of your importance. To a thing like me, a thing like you, well. Think how you'd feel if a bacterium sat at your table and started to get snarky. The Shinigami replied with his raspy voice. This is one little planet. On a tiny solar system. In a galaxy that is barely out of its diapers. I'm old, Naruto, very old. So I invite you to contemplate how insignificant I find you. The Shinigami finished, and Naruto turned his head slowly, getting a first glimpse of his form. The Shinigami was dressed in a dark business suit, hiding beneath his skinny form. He carried a steel-tipped cane in his right hand. His face was that of an old man with wrinkled skin and pitch black, slicked back hair. Not what I expected, Naruto answered, gazing at his form. Once more you are clouded by hubris. Even your academy students can change their shape, and yet you find me, an omnipotent being, to be unable to. The Shinigami replied neutrally, crossing his hands above his cane. I suppose, Naruto sighed, standing up and turning towards the Shinigami. What are you doing here? Naruto asked cautiously. After all, he was standing in front of the death god itself. You called and I found myself compelled to honor our agreement, the Shinigami replied, walking forward slowly until he stood but a foot from Naruto. He ran a single finger over Naruto's cheekbone. Those eyes of yours, they intrigue me to no end. So fragile and with such potential. The power of creation is not something I can claim of possessing. But you, a mortal even, to wield such ability. The Shinigami trailed off, backing off. Since you are here, I don't suppose you could locate Hinata for me? Naruto asked hopefully. There are rules in place. I cannot directly interfere in the mortal world, the Shinigami answered neutrally. You helped my dad seal Kurama and me, Naruto replied with a deadpan voice. That was different. I was summoned and received his soul as payment, the Shinigami answered truthfully. And what payment do you request for this favor? Naruto asked harshly, spatting the last word. Mind your tone, human, the Shinigami bellowed sternly. I'm afraid I can't locate your precious wife. I can only feel souls without vessels. The girl you refer still draws breath. That makes me feel so much better, Naruto answered sarcastically. Some god you are, Naruto said, shaking his head. You seem to have a wrong understanding how things work. My sister, Izanagi, creates. My other sister, Izanami, destroys, and I keep the balance. Neither of us is more powerful than the other and none is omnipotent. It's as simple as that, Death explained and walked forward towards Naruto, their noses nearly touching. You think you are a god? Death asked, his pupils expanding. Please, I've seen my sisters and you, sir, are no god. I could kill you right here. It would be so easy. Like snapping a twig. You are welcome to try. I have my hubris after all, Naruto replied, never looking away from Death's eyes. Foolish boy. You can't kill Death, Death replied, shaking his head in disbelief. Foolish mortals. You are weak. Frail. Pathetic. You fear yourselves and what you will become. Your bones will turn to glass. Your body to dust. Your hopes to ash. Stumble in the dark and grasp whatever light you can. It does not matter. Because in the end, only I will remain. Perhaps, Naruto replied, making Death narrow his eyes. But I am very adept in the sealing arts, Naruto warned. You are the first mortal to ever say that to me. Most just cry or cower, some try to run, others just accept it, but no one has ever tried to defy me. You intrigue me, Senju, Naruto, Death said and turned away, walking off from Naruto. He suddenly stopped and looked backwards. Call me again for pointless matters and I will kill you. You know, Naruto began with a chuckle. I do believe this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. Death said nothing and simply disappeared from view. Naruto just didn't want to think about what happened right now and simply sat back down. Seconds turned into minutes, minutes into hours. Mom was right, Naruto sighed, looking at the sky. The rain had ceased somewhere along the night and the sun was just peeking in the horizon. I became the very thing I once told Sasuke not to be, Naruto laughed weakly. Naruto got up and started walking back to the Senju compound. He had a few things to fix. Senju compound. Most of the shinobi living in the Senju compound were in the kitchen, eating breakfast. They heard the door creak open and watched as Naruto walked inside. Hey, Naruto greeted weakly and walked to the table. No one said anything as Naruto sat down and began eating as well. Sorry, Naruto suddenly said, making everyone stop their actions. I'm sorry the way I acted in the last few days, Naruto muttered and Kushina nodded, placing a hand on his shoulders. Dad, Abo, don't worry about it, Minato waved him off. I would be a lousy father if I didn't forgive my son for lashing out when he was hurt. Minato grinned and Naruto nodded, his eyes watering. How did he get her? Naruto suddenly asked. It occurred Naruto that he never asked Tsunade about how Madara had taken her. He had only been away for a few seconds, a minute at the latest. He is fast, Naruto. Very fast, Tsunade answered sorrowfully. What kind of master couldn't protect her apprentice? She looked at Naruto and waited for him to blow up again. But he didn't. How fast? Naruto asked after a few moments. Tsunade smiled. He was beginning to reason instead of being driven by emotion. I guess we know from where Minato inherited his speed. Madara didn't seem to be at his level, but... Tsunade trailed off. Naruto understood what she meant. He knocked us around in the blink of an eye. Neither of us expected that. Zetsu came and grabbed both of them, Tsunade explained. What about Hinata? Naruto asked, looking at his plate and clenching his fists to contain the anger he felt at Madara. We will find her, Naruto, Kushina said softly. Then we will kick his ass, she barked, punching the air. Aigu's Naruto's head snapped to the side. He sensed something, a presence approaching the compound. Before anyone could ask what happened, Naruto's eyes lit up as he jumped from his seat and ran to the door, nearly dragging the wooden stool with him. He was at the door in the blink of an eye and pulled it open, smashing the handle into the wall. Hinata, Naruto muttered, looking at the person standing on the other side. He hoped it wasn't a mirage he was seeing. At the door stood a woman who looked exactly like her. Hinata-chan, he whispered, and she nodded, running to him and hugging him fiercely, as if he'd slip away at any instant. Hinata sobbed in his arms as he held her, dropping to the floor. The rest of the compound went after Naruto and found him and Hinata, cradling together on the floor. Hinata, she's back, Kushina shouted in astonishment and surprise. Naruto finally let go of her and stepped back a little. He raised her face and gently cleaned her tears. "Hinata-chan," he said softly, running his thumb over her cheek. Both Naruto and Hinata got up. Everyone walked inside and sat around the kitchen table. Everyone was shocked to see that Hinata had returned, on her own. "How did she manage to escape?" "I know you have questions," Hinata said, breaking the awkward silence in the room. She snuggled deeper into Naruto's arms, who tightened his hold ever so slightly. It was amazing how her presence calmed him down, all his anger, hatred, gone. "How can we be sure it's really you and not some Zetsu clone?" Tobirama asked, crossing his arms and leaning back in his chair. He wouldn't put it past Madara to try and scheme something. "I already touched her soul." "Zetsu don't have any," Naruto replied, stopping Tobirama's incoming rant. "How did you escape?" Hashirama asked, narrowing his eyes. "Madara isn't exactly stupid to the point of letting prisoners escape." "I didn't escape," Hinata chuckled softly. "He let me go," Hinata said, making several jaws hit the ground. "He let you go? Just like that?" Tobirama asked in disbelief, and Hinata nodded in disbelief as well. She still could barely believe that she was simply released. "According to him, my kidnapping had two purposes. The first was to get his Rinnegan back," Hinata said, and Naruto's eyes widened. He was about to leave, but Hinata held him in place. "It's already gone, Naruto-kun. He read my mind with his Rinnegan and sent a Zetsu clone of me to the hospital. He already has the Rinnegan," Hinata said, looking the floor. "I'm sorry. I couldn't resist the Sharingan Genjutsu, but the Rinnegan." "Don't worry, Hinata-chan. I'm glad you're safe. Nothing else matters," Naruto said gently. "What was the other reason?" Hashirama asked, rubbing his chin. "He said it was to make Naruto-kun ready," Hinata explained, making everyone frown in confusion. "Ready? Ready for what?" Naruto asked, and Hinata simply shrugged her shoulders. To be honest, she was just happy to be back and not particularly interested in his reasons for now. "Why don't you explain from the beginning?" Tsunade asked, and Hinata nodded, taking a deep breath and beginning her tale. Everything was fuzzy. Hinata was feeling fuzzy, the last remnants of her dreams being chased away by the growing pain on the back of her neck. She turned her head slowly, groaning at the stiffness she felt in the area. She tried bringing her right hand to massage her neck but found she couldn't. What happened? Hinata wondered in thought. She still had eyes closed, not truly wanting to face the brightness should she open them. That was until the memories of the previous night came flooding in. Her eyes snapped open only to be closed immediately after due to the brightness. She took a calming breath and slowly opened her eyes, letting them adjust to the ambient light of the room. The first thing she noted was that her hands were bound behind her back, her legs bound in similar fashion. She tried using her chakra scalpel to cut down the ropes but felt high resistance in molding chakra. She carefully examined her body, searching for any trace of a chakra seal. Something was blocking her ability to mold chakra, and usually it was a chakra-suppressing seal stuck somewhere in contact with her skin. Alas, her searches were for nothing. She couldn't activate her Byakugan, and being bound restrained her movements a lot. She decided to observe the room where she was stuck. The room itself was very plain. Brown walls with wooden floor, a door and a single light bulb stranded in the ceiling. "Where am I?" she wondered. She remembered taking a heavy blow to the back of her head, courtesy of Madara, but after that it was blank. She didn't even remember the dream she had, mere moments ago. Hinata turned towards the door. She could hear voices coming from the other side. She focused and tried to pick up any word. She recognized the voices. They belonged to Izuna and Madara, but they were talking too quietly for her to hear properly. One, she recognized Madara's voice. Power, person. Now that voice belonged to Izuna. Hinata, straight. Hinata was surprised to hear her name being uttered in their conversation. She was trying to make sense, but she only got a few words here and there. Not nearly enough to complete the sentences and understand their conversation. Why? Izuna asked. Because, change, villain. Hinata heard Madara reply, and then it was over. Instead of words, she now heard the sound of footsteps getting closer and closer. The door opened and the Uchiha brothers stepped inside. Neither said a word as they approached Hinata. Hinata watched them approach, her heart speeding up in response. "What do you want with me?" Hinata asked, her voice calm and neutral, not betraying the nervousness she felt inside. Outside she was as calm as possible, but inside there was a maelstrom of thoughts running through her mind. "Relax, girl," Madara replied, sitting in front of her with his legs crossed together. "As to why you are here?" "3 reasons," Madara said, raising 3 fingers. "First, his information, obviously. I'm about to wage war and any information on the enemy is essential after all. The second reason is to make Naruto ready," Madara said, and Hinata just stared blankly at him. "And 3, if anyone knows where my Rinnegan is, it will be you," Madara said with a small chuckle. Hinata's eyes widened a fraction of an inch as she tried to show no emotion at his words. "I will tell you nothing," Hinata hissed coldly. "You don't have to." Madara smirked and activated his Rinnegan. He placed a single hand on Hinata's head and grabbed her by the ear to stop her from struggling. "Stop!" she shouted, squirming under his touch to try and break free. Ninjendo, it was too late. Hinata's eyes dazed as if she entered some type of trance. Madara quickly shuffled through her memories until he found what he was looking for. His Rinnegan was at Konoha Hospital, in Hinata's private laboratory where she had been running a few tests on the eyes. Madara removed his hand and stepped back as Hinata regained her focus. "Zetsu!" Madara called, and a single white Zetsu appeared from the ground. "You know what to do," Madara said, and the clone nodded silently. The Zetsu clone touched Hinata and immediately took her form. "Go get my eyes," Madara ordered, and the clone sunk into the ground, heading towards Konoha at full speed. "Naruto-kun will defeat you, even if have your eyes back," Hinata replied defiantly. "Girl, who says I want to defeat him?" Madara chuckled darkly, getting a confusion face from Hinata. "Don't for a moment assume to know my plans." "What now?" Hinata asked, her heart hammering on her chest. Were they going to kill her now that they had the information they needed? "Now we wait," Madara said and walked out, leaving Hinata alone in the room. "Wait for what?" Hinata said out loud as the light on the ceiling turned off and she was left alone in the dark. Next day. She didn't get any sleep that night. Even completely shrouded in the darkness of the room, she couldn't help but let her mind wander and work overtime on how to escape. Although it put things into perspective, how terribly weak any shinobi was without their chakra to fuel their powers. Naruto and other strong shinobi like Rock Lee and Mido Gai might be able to break their binds with raw muscle strength alone, but Hinata's massive strength was solely based on her chakra. Her Byakugan needed chakra. Even her Senbon and Kunais needed chakra since they were stored away in her storage seals. She sighed and leaned back against the wall. There wasn't much to do around here unless wait for something to happen. Suddenly the lights were turned on and Hinata scrunched her eyes at the sudden brightness. The door opened and Izuna strolled inside with a metal tray. "Rise and shine." Izuna laughed at his own joke as he walked into the room. "Didn't get much sleep?" he asked, noticing the dark bags under her eyes. "Anyway, enjoy lunch," Izuna said, putting the tray on the floor and sitting in front of her. "I don't suppose you would remove the cuffs?" Hinata asked with a smile. "I know very well the extent of your abilities. Even with your chakra sealed you could take me on in a taijutsu battle." Izuna chuckled. "Open up," Izuna said, dipping the spoon into the soup and raising it up in the air. Hinata just stared at him in disbelief and looked at the food with suspicion. "It's not poisoned," Izuna sighed, and Hinata reluctantly nodded, opening her mouth and swallowing the soup. It was pretty good soup in the end. "Where am I?" Hinata asked between mouthfuls. "Amigakure," Izuna replied, and Hinata stopped eating. "Rain Village is under Konan's rule," Hinata said suspiciously until a look of shock hit her. Only Konan knew the fate of Nagato's Rinnegan, and that meant she was gone. Madara had found her. So Madara is ruling the Rain Village? Hinata thought, storing that information away. "Not anymore," Izuna replied, putting down the bowl. "Care to explain why I'm here?" Hinata asked, more with curiosity than anything. She couldn't do much without chakra. It was rather pathetic how shinobi relied on it. "Leverage?" Izuna offered while Hinata just stared at him. "How should I know? I don't know what goes through my brother's head," Izuna explained. "Of course not," Hinata replied kindly. "You're just his sidekick, being forced into remedial service. I mean, a big, strong Uchiha like you being forced to feed a captured Hyuga of all people," Hinata said, a smile hinting in the corner of her lips. "That was pretty good," Izuna laughed while Hinata scowled. "Trying to turn me on my brother. If it was any other Uchiha it might work." Hinata mumbled something inaudible as she stared at the metallic tray on the ground. She looked carefully and noticed that she could see her reflection. But what caught her eyes was a strange pattern drawn over her forehead. She watched carefully, taking care to not warn Izuna of anything. "So Madara drew the seal directly in my skin," Hinata thought as she analyzed it the best she could. She wasn't a seal master herself, but she knew enough to know that the seal was pretty good. Damn headache, Hinata thought bitterly. As if this whole situation wasn't enough, she also needed the damn headache to return. Naruto didn't get to explain her problem at all. "All done," Izuna said, picking the tray and getting up. "See you later," Izuna said and walked out of the room, closing the door behind and leaving Hinata alone once again. "How is she?" Madara asked with curiosity. Izuna looked to the side and noticed Madara leaning against the wall. He was back to a human body, having used the original Rinnegan to get rid of his Edo Tensei body. "How do you think?" Izuna replied sarcastically. "Angry?" Madara offered, but Izuna shook his head in denial. "No. She's come to terms with her kidnapping. She is more interested in your motives," Izuna said, and Madara chuckled. Izuna mumbled something that Madara didn't hear. Come again? I could swear that I saw her eyes twinkling, Izuna said, scratching his chin. Izuna, Madara began calmly. A Byakugan doesn't glow, it doesn't spin, and most certainly doesn't twinkle, wise ass. Few days later. Good morning, Izuna shouted as he opened the door and stepped into Hinata's holding room. Izuna expected Hinata to be lying down, sleeping, or simply leaning down against the wall. Instead, he found her sitting on the ground, legs crossed and her back perfectly straight. Hinata was sitting in perfect lotus position with her eyes closed. Her breathing was deep and evenly. What are you doing? Izuna asked with confusion. What was the point of mediating when you couldn't access your inner chakra? You there? Izuna asked, kneeling in front of her. He frowned when he didn't receive any answer. Whatever, Izuna muttered and placed the food down. He started walking towards the door and, with one last look back, he closed the door, leaving Hinata alone. Izuna was mumbling profanities beneath his breath when he crossed paths with Madara. What's wrong? Madara asked with a raised eyebrow. Izuna was always rather cheerful, unlike most Uchihas. She didn't greet me good morning, Izuna whined, shedding crocodile tears. Madara just shook his head in disbelief. He wondered how he put up with Izuna back in the day. Stop when, Madara was broken from his thoughts when he felt something coming from Hinata's holding room. Was it his imagination? He could swear he felt a chakra spike coming from her room. What was she doing? Madara asked with curiosity. Meditating, Izuna replied with a confused face. Why do you ask? Madara, however, didn't reply and just looked towards the door, as if expecting something to happen. Izuna was about to get his brother's attention when both Uchihas felt a massive chakra spike from Hinata's room, enough to make them stumble slightly. The wave of chakra washed through the building, making a few specks of dust fall from the ceiling. What the hell? Izuna shouted and looked towards his brother in shock. Madara, however, just stared at the door with a smile in his face. Izuna knew that smile all too well, and it always meant trouble. Boom! Izuna's head snapped towards the side of the sound. He barely had enough time to dodge the incoming projectile. His Sharingan had activated just in time to see the woodland door being blasted cleanly from its hinges and flying a few inches above his head. Finally, Madara thought with a smirk as Hinata's form appeared from the dust cloud. Hinata appeared from the room with a look of fierce determination. Her Byakugan blazing, but what caught his attention was her aura. The chakra seal he had placed on her forehead was gone. Now, she had purple markings extending from her diamond-shaped figure, going down her cheeks and into the jawline. Her body was surrounded by an intense purple aura. For Madara's Sharingan, it was like she was surrounded by purple fire, licking her feet. Took you long enough, Madara commented. Hinata cracked her neck and flexed her wrist, punching the nearby wall and bringing the whole thing down into nothing more than small rocks. Izuna, stay out of this, Madara warned as he stepped forward. Your only way out is through me, Madara said, cracking his knuckles. Care to try your luck? Madara asked with a smirk. Hinata didn't say anything and shot forward, her fists glowing with chakra, just waiting to be unleashed. Come girl, Madara shouted, jumping forward and meeting Hinata head-on. Prove you are worthy of fighting me, Madara laughed, lashing out a fast punch that struck Hinata right in the face. Hinata exploded in a shower of water. Water clone, Madara thought, letting the water wash over him until he saw a blur fly past him. His Sharingan allowed him to track Hinata as she flew past him, heading towards the door. He didn't think twice and blurred after her. Hinata noticed that her decoy had already been destroyed and that Madara was running after her, closing in very fast. She bit her lip and looked forward. The exit to the building was near. She charged up her fist and took abruptly turn to the right. Madara's hand missing her hair by an inch. Hinata jumped in the air and brought her fist down against the floor. With a deafening bang, the floor started cracking and the building they stood on started vibrating. Izuna, get out. The building is coming down, Madara yelled to his brother, who nodded in reply. Madara turned back towards Hinata before blurring through hand seals. Kaden, Gukakyu Uno Jutsu. Madara spewed a large fireball against Hinata, who punched the floor, breaking the rock and forcing the whole floor to cave in. The large fireball flew over her head and took out the roof. Both Madara and Hinata attached themselves to the falling debris, jumping between them to avoid the falling pieces of rock. For the first time since her capture, Hinata got a glimpse of the Rain Village. Wherever she had been captive was certainly high enough, she could see the whole village from there. She looked up and saw Madara crouched just before leaping towards her. A purple ribcage forming around his body with a single samurai blade pointing straight towards her. Hinata was about to jump away when a wave of pain hit her whole body, centered mostly on her head. She flinched internally and fell to her knees, shaking her head. The previous pain had been annoying, but that had been it. But this last wave of pain was certainly not pleasant at all. She looked up just in time to see Madara thrusting his sword right through her chest. Hinata dissolved into water as Madara removed his sword. Hinata reformed under the falling chunk of rock before jumping downwards and plummeting to the ground. She turned around mid-air, falling to the ground on her back. Suten, Teppaudama. She pumped her lungs with water and unleashed a compressed water ball towards Madara. Mizu no Muchi, Hinata thought, forming a whip-like construct around her wrist and latching it onto the nearby building. Madara smirked and swatted the water attack with his sword. He noticed Hinata was gone. He looked around until he felt a presence to the side. He turned in time to see Hinata flying towards him. She cocked her fist back just before smashing against Madara's Susanoo. She was pleased with her attack when she saw Madara's shield cracking beneath her attack and plummeting to the ground even faster, creating sonic booms as he passed through the air. Madara twirled mid-air and turned facing the ground. The earth was approaching fast. He flexed his arm and pointed towards the ground. Shinra Tensei, he bellowed, unleashing a pulse of gravity, creating a noticeable indentation on the water on the ground, enough to show the earth a few inches beneath. Madara landed on the water with a loud crash and looked up, seeing Hinata in a free fall. Just before she could hit the water head-on, she liquefied her body and there was a simple plop sound. He watched with a smirk as she reformed and stood in front of him. "I see you stopped trying to run away," Madara commented, sidestepping a piece of rock that they're still falling from Pain's tower. "I wouldn't be getting far," Hinata replied back. She looked around and noticed they landed pretty far from the main city. They were both surrounded by water and it was raining heavily. Home field advantage, Hinata thought. She would be able to put quite a fight surrounded by her natural element if Madara used fire techniques. "To think you had enough control over Senjutsu to break my seal," Madara stated, but stopped when Hinata snorted. "I may not be a seal master, but I can see when a seal hasn't been properly structured," Hinata said, narrowing her eyes. "I've never been much good in the sealing arts." Madara shrugged his shoulders. "Bullshit," Hinata scoffed, making Madara raise an eyebrow in interest. "Building arrays is the very first thing you learn. They provide the foundation to good overall stability. It's why learning the sealing arts without a teacher around is very dangerous. Without a good array, seals tend to blow up. It takes a skilled person to build a good array." Hinata paused, noticing the smile appearing on Madara. "But it takes a master to make this array stable enough not to blow up, but just that little bit weaker to be breakable." "You set this up from the very beginning," Hinata finished, and Madara's smile had turned into a smirk. "Perhaps," Madara replied with amusement. "You are sharper than people give you credit for. But my comment remains true nonetheless. You do have very good control over Senjutsu. Is this part of your grand scheme? I breaking the seal so that you can play with me?" Hinata wondered as Madara laughed. "Everything I do is part of grand plan, and you are the queen on the board," Madara replied as Hinata tensed for the fight. "And who is the king?" Hinata asked as Madara began building up chakra. "Naruto, of course. A king falls without his queen, and a kingdom falls without its king," Madara answered before his hands blurred towards the horse seal. "Kaden, go Kamekiyaku." Madara drew his breath and unleashed a torrent of fire. The wave of heat completely vaporizing the falling rain on its path. Hinata raised her hand to shield her face from the heat as her body started liquefying. Moments before the fire connected with her, she completely burst into water and plunged into the water on the ground. She reappeared on the other side a few feet behind Madara and quickly rose from the water, her body regaining form as she pulled her arm backwards to strike. She thrust her arm forward, aiming at Madara's unprotected heart. But Madara wasn't an ordinary shinobi. He turned faster than she expected and caught her chakra-powered punch with an open palm, much to her shock. It was then she noticed that he had his Rinnegan activated and had simply sucked the chakra from her fist, rendering her chakra-powered punch useless. Hinata immediately slipped from his grasp and jumped backwards, gaining some distance. She crouched on the ground, immediately going through Hansel's Haijutsu, Mugen no Ame. The heavy rain was laced with chakra and she could already start to feel her surroundings. Interesting, Madara thought to himself, noticing his chakra being absorbed by the rain. It was a pesky amount to someone like him, but it was chakra nonetheless. He looked up and noticed that her Byakugan was activating, her veins slowly bulging. He would let her have the first move. He could feel Hinata scrutinizing him in every way possible. "He absorbed part of my Senjutsu chakra but had no effect on him," Hinata mused in thought. His chakra's reserves were massive, being on par with Naruto. He wondered how much time she was going to take. He noticed a small twitch in her feet as she blasted forward, the water rippling in her wake. "Enough with the clones," Madara snarled, backhanding the charging Hinata as she burst into water. Just as Madara said those words, another set of 5 clones burst from the water, surrounding him. 2 black rods of metal rose from his palms, one in each hand. With a graceful twirl, all of Hinata's clone were slashed and destroyed in the blink of an eye. This is boring, Madara sighed until he felt a pulse of chakra. Kaimonkai. Hinata thought, sending a burst of chakra to her brain and opening the first gate. She coiled before blurring forward at tremendous speed. Madara's Sharingan could only watch as Hinata flew towards him. Time seemed to slow down as Madara brought his arm to block Hinata's punch. Hinata was getting closer and his arm wasn't in the right position still. She was a few inches away and his hand was barely away from her outstretched fist. Madara's eyes widened when a small water whip latched onto his arm, restraining his movements. His attention shifted back to Hinata as her fist connected with his jaw. Madara's skin rippled and his face twisted into unnatural angles. He could swear he heard a cracking sound as he blasted backwards, tumbling through the water until he regained his balance and stood up. He looked down and noticed a few drops of blood falling to the water. He licked his lips, savoring the metallic taste. "It's been a while since I've seen my own blood," Madara said, his lips parting into a smile. Hinata did not wish to stand still and wait. She ran forward once more, taking advantage of her temporary increased speed to match Madara. Madara smirked mere moments before Hinata touched him. Katen, Jingaku no Jutsu. Madara took a deep breath and expelled a chakra-infused ash that covered a wide area. Hinata cried as her skin was burned for being caught in the middle of the fire jutsu. Madara watched as Hinata jumped away from the ash cloud, her skin sizzling and regenerating. All her burns gone in a matter of seconds. "Interesting. Your healing factor is similar to Hashirama's," Madara commented to himself. "Katen, Goenka." Hinata watched as Madara took a deep breath once more and launched countless fireballs. It felt like it was raining fire, the whole sky taking an orange tinge of color. "This is ridiculous," Hinata thought in disbelief as she looked at the raining balls of fire. Each one was the size of a standard fireball, and there were dozens of them. She jumped away as a fireball landed close to her, closing her eyes in the process. "Suten, Bakusui Shuha." Hinata clasped her hands as the water on the ground started swirling furiously. Seconds before Hinata was overrun with the fireballs, a huge tornado of water burst from the earth. Hinata's hair fluttered violently as she poured her Senjutsu chakra into her water attack. The tornado of water roared into existence, toppling the great walls of the rain village in height. The fireball crashed into the water spout harmlessly. With a shout from the Hinata, the tornado stopped spinning but the water remained perfectly still. Madara watched as the tornado started changing shape into a massive water wall, spanning a wide spread. And with that, the water wall charged forward like a tsunami. The flames sputtered and died instantly, snuffed out like candles under the huge volume of water that poured down. The sky seemed filled with water and for the first time, Madara felt small. The wave curled on itself and crashed down on the ground, the earth quaking on its wake. "Shinra Tensei," Madara bellowed, pushing the incoming wall of water. His eyes widened as his pulse of gravity did nothing to the wave as it simply wrapped around his body from all sides. From the left. From the right. From the back. From the sky. His Susanoo was brought into existence as his form was swallowed whole by the wave. Madara's Susanoo stumbled within the water, trying to regain balance but unable due to the rustling of the strong current. His Susanoo formed to two large swords and stabbed them deeply into the earth, stabilizing himself deep beneath the ocean Hinata had just created. Madara looked up to see Hinata standing on top of the water while he was buried beneath it. He had never seen such pure, crystalline water. He was broken from his thoughts when he heard a cracking sound and saw a crack line appear on his Susanoo. It was breaking under the pressure of the water. His eyes widened when he saw that the whole rain in the sky seemed to stop and start converging into one massive ball in the sky. "Looks like she is worthy after all," Madara commented as Hinata brought her hand down with a shout. "Mizuchi!" Hinata roared, a serpent-like creature taking shape. It opened his large mouth, showing razor-sharp fangs before plummeting to the earth and sinking into the water, heading straight towards Madara. Madara watched in fascinating as the serpent swallowed his Susanoo, placing unimaginable pressure. His Susanoo was giving under the pressure. Madara's eyes glowed and his armor evolved into the next stage, gaining another reinforcement to withstand the tide. But even that was not enough. His humanoid was getting buried in the ground by the pressure of the dragon. The Susanoo crossed all four arms around his main body but it was still cracking. And mere seconds later, the legendary shield of the Mangekyou Sharingan gave out and shattered like glass. Madara was going to follow the same path until a smirk crossed his lips and he closed his eyes in concentration. Worthy indeed, he laughed in thought. Boom! A large explosion rocked the whole grounds and village. Hinata cried as she was blasted back and the water shot into the sky, creating mini tsunamis. She watched as a monstrous figure rose from the water and stood tall in front of her. Hinata could only watch in despair as Madara summoned his perfect Susanoo. And just like Naruto, Madara's Susanoo was imposing. His armor was just as big as Naruto, and from the chakra it was leaking, she could guess that it was equally powerful. What was she supposed to do against such colossal warrior? Against a shinobi that defied the meaning of S rank? You should feel proud, Madara said from the top of his Susanoo. He stood floating in the diamond-shaped figure in the Susanoo's forehead. Only Hashirama has ever forced me to summon my perfect Susanoo. Hinata, however, didn't know if she should feel proud or horrified. He and Naruto were more similar than she thought. They had similar builds, mannerism, and even their powers were similar. Except she had never fought against Naruto using his full power, because she knew very well just what he could do. Hinata tensed as the Susanoo gripped the sword tightly. Susanoo, the Sharingan greatest defense and also its ultimate defense. Madara unsheathed his sword with lightning speed, unleashing a powerful shockwave that ripped through the earth. Suru no Jutsu. Hinata jumped as far as she could, immersing herself in water bubble as the shockwave crashed against her and she was propelled backwards. Her water prison shattering against the power of the shockwave, barely able to dull the initial impact. Hinata twirled midair and landed gracefully on the water. Even liquefying my body didn't stop the attack from hurting me. Hinata grimaced in thought. I guess I don't have any other choice against this, Hinata muttered, steadying herself against the tremors caused by each step of Madara's Susanoo. And what can you do? Madara asked with amusement. Hachimo Tonko no Jin. Hinata grimaced, knowing full what she was about to do. She channeled the remaining of her Senjutsu chakra into her heart and placed her thumb against her chest. Kai. Hinata roared, and at first nothing happened. Suddenly, a shockwave was released from her body, strong enough to draw Madara's curiosity as he stopped his advances and watched in curiosity what Hinata was doing. Hinata's aura skyrocketed as the air around her swirled furiously. The ground started cracking and caving from her chakra pressure alone. Her hair stood on end as her skin gained a pale purple outline. The purple outline started gaining color, getting brighter and brighter, completely enveloping her form. Her hair danced in the wind and her Byakugan started gaining an unnatural glow as her raw Senjutsu chakra saturated the air. Oh? Madara commented with a raised eyebrow as he gazed into Hinata's shrouded form. She was certainly putting out a lot of chakra. He would bet that the whole Rain country would feel both of their chakra by now. Hinata took a deep breath, steadying her breathing against the maelstrom of chakra in her system. She charged her arms with so much chakra it became visible to the naked eye, and with that, she leapt. Madara lost track of her as she jumped. She had gained speed. He stood still inside his Susanoo, waiting patiently for Hinata to make her move. He didn't take long until he felt a mountain smashing against his back, forcing his massive Susanoo to stumble forward. Madara instantly looked backwards, seeing Hinata with her arm extended against the Susanoo back. Madara blinked at the power behind her punch and she was gone once more. What the? Madara felt her approaching from the front this time. He didn't want to stand still and unsheathed his sword. With a flick of wrist he sent a powerful crescent wave of energy against the charging Hinata. Hinata looked up against the coming attack. Haki Hosongaki. She thrust her arm forward, unleashing a powerful chakra burst mere moments before Susanoo's attack connected with her. Hinata's attack ripped through the energy wave, continuing and crashing against the Susanoo who blocked with both arms in X shape. She didn't waste any second and run towards the Susanoo at full speed just before leaping once more. She cocked her right arm backwards and smashed her fist against the Susanoo's right kneecap. Time seemed to slow down to Madara as her fist connected against the Susanoo's leg. Her fist connected with his leg with a resounding bang. At first nothing happened, but suddenly Madara heard a cracking sound and could watch as the Susanoo's leg cracked, splintered into pieces under the pressure of her punch and was launched off into the distance. Madara only looked in shock at his now missing right leg, but Hinata didn't stand still. Once she landed, she jumped upwards and delivered a powerful uppercut to the Susanoo. The massive shield rose into the air slightly just before crashing down on his back. The earth quaking under the colossal warrior, Hinata winced as pain coursed over her all body. The next blow would be her last. She jumped high into the air. Tsutenjaku. She concentrated the remnants of her strength on her heel and hit the down Susanoo's chest with a powerful falling axe kick. Madara only watched as the air rippled when her heel connected with his Susanoo and his entire warrior immediately cracked and disintegrated into dust under the shockwave. Choshinra Tensei. Madara bellowed, countering the shockwave with a pulse of gravity, and everything turned into a blinding light as both forces connected with each other. Boo-oh-oh-um. The earth quaked as both forces matched against each other. Trees were uprooted, the rain stopped falling as even the massive walls of the rain village resonated under the massive shockwave. The dust started clearing off and the sun started shining through the clouds. Madara grunted, lifting himself out of the rubble with one final push. All the water had been vaporized. He got onto his feet and stumbled slightly before regaining his balance. He spat a mouthful of blood as he looked around, noticing for the first time the devastation Hinata's attack had accomplished. There was nothing around them but a large crater. Madara grimaced in pain when he looked at the stump that used to be his left arm. The force of Hinata's full power had enough to destroy his perfect Susanoo and take his left arm with it. Madara started walking forward, moving towards the center of the crater. He strained his eyes and saw Hinata kneeling in the middle of the blast zone, her breathing slow and shallow. She stood completely still, blood dripping slightly from her mouth. Her senjutsu marks were long gone from her face, and replaced by signs of pure exhaustion. "To think," Madara said, stopping a few feet from her. "That even for just a moment, you were stronger than me." Madara chuckled aimlessly, taking a deep breath. "If I had been on the same level when I faced Hashirama back in the day, you would have won," Madara said, his breathing returning to normal. "To open the 8 gates and live. You are truly amazing," Madara said with pride. "Zetsu," Madara called, and the white clone popped from the ground. "Take her to the hideout and patch her up," Madara ordered, and the clone nodded, moving towards Hinata. "It's nearly time," Madara said, looking at the sky and bathing in the rare sunlight of Amiga Core. Arg! Madara's head snapped to the source of the scream. The screaming was coming from Zetsu, and he could understand why. Zetsu had been pierced right through the middle of his chest by what seemed to a pure white blade of some sort. Zetsu gripped the blade as he was lifted into the air as if he weighed nothing. "Tomigoroshi no Haikotsu," he heard Hinata whisper faintly, and could only watch in shock as the Zetsu clone started rotting and crumbling until he was nothing more than a pile of ash on the ground. Madara looked in astonishment as the white blade receded back into Hinata's outstretched arm, disappearing deep into her open palm. "The Shikatsu Myaku," Madara whispered in shock. It wasn't possible. This wasn't some bloodline you could awaken like the Sharingan. You were either born with it or you lucked out. This bloodline had only been seen in the Kaguya clan, and even among them it was a rarity. If things couldn't get any worse, Madara watched completely frozen as Hinata's wounds disappeared, her gashes mended themselves together, and the blood dripping from her mouth was simply reabsorbed back into her body. Even her face was losing signs of exhaustion. A side effect of the bone-dead pulse? An external healing factor to compensate the usage of bones, Madara mused, watching her intently. Madara's jaw hit the floor when her hair started turning snow-white in color. It began in her head and started branching out until the end of her hair. "What the hell is going on?" Madara cursed. He didn't like not knowing what was happening. "Is she an Uzumaki now?" Madara growled, only seeing the hair turning white on the Uzumaki clan, after their members broke their limits. But that couldn't be. His Sharingan could still see her chakra. She hadn't expended all of it. She still had enough, but she pushed her body too far with the 8 gates. He watched as Hinata took a deep breath and looked up, towards him. He was half expecting a couple of horns and an eyeball in the middle of her forehead by the going of things. Madara just gaped as he watched Hinata's eyes glowing a light blue. They were changing, he could see it clearly with the Sharingan. The hollow look of the Byakugan was gone. It was being replaced by a pitch-black pupil and a bluish, flower-like pattern around it. Her eyes glowed and the vein bulges around her eyes disappeared. "A new Dujutsu?" Madara muttered in disbelief. The Hyuga clan had been around for centuries and there never was even the faintest whisper of an evolved Byakugan. But Madara couldn't deny his eyes as the evidence stood right in front of him. He watched as she stood up in silence and just stared at him with her new eyes. He could swear she had a faint smile of her lips, and was her hair moving? Madara blinked as her hair started waving behind her back, but there was no wind around. Naito Hinata smiled as her hair lengthened considerably. Togebari Hinata launched countless hardened needles from her hair. Madara immediately activated his Susanoo to block the incoming attack. He was surprised to see the needles digging themselves deep into his Susanoo. His shield had barely been able to block the ferocious attack. It seems she hasn't lost any accuracy with her new eyes, Madara thought, noticing that every single needle was aimed at vital points. Madara looked as the attack stopped and Hinata sprang forward. She seemed slower than usual but still faster than most shinobi he had ever faced. Madara braced himself as Hinata closed the distance in the blink of an eye. She threw her fist forward and Madara was about to block it when a bone burst from her hand. His eyes widened as he sidestepped the attack and immediately ducked under a swipe. He watched as the bone sliced a few strands of his long hair and saw the hair disintegrating to dust before his very eyes. "Can't let her touch me with those bones," Madara thought. He was curious about her bones. They seemed different from what he heard about the dead bone pulse. The Kaguya clan could use bones as weapons, but that was about it. He never heard of bones destroying anything they touched. Madara was broken from his thoughts and lashed out a lightning-fast kick to her chest. He was surprised when several bones popped from her ribcage to block his kick. His eyes widened as he immediately jumped backwards, discarding his right sandal as it disintegrated from being in contact with her bones. A dangerous opponent, Madara thought with a smile, but it too late for fighting her again. Even with the new awakened Jujutsu, her chakra reserves were depleting. She was tired, even if she didn't want to show it. He saw as Hinata took a step back and looked around as if she was being cornered. Madara watched her with curiosity. Hinata suddenly sprang to the right and thrust both arms forward, piercing what seemed to be thin air. Madara stood frozen as the shadow he had projected with his Rinnegan crumbled into dust. But it wasn't possible. Only someone descended from the Sage of the Six Paths could project, feel or see the shadows. And only someone with his chakra could harm them. Who are you? Madara thought with narrowed eyes. She turned around and focused her new blue eyes on him. Madara swung his stump of an arm, throwing blood into her newly awakened eyes. Clearly Hinata didn't expect it as she stumbled backwards and clutched to her eyes. Gakido, Madara said, grabbing Hinata by the neck and absorbing the remaining of her chakra. Hinata gasped as her remaining chakra was stolen. Her eyes started losing their blue hue and turned back to their usual hollow look of the Byakugan, and alongside it, her hair returned to the dark blue color as well. So you can turn those eyes off, Madara mused as she blacked out, putting an end to the battle. Madara gently lowered her to the ground and watched as another Zetsu came and took her away. How intriguing, Madara said out loud, thinking back to Hinata's eyes. Man, Izuna said, stepping into the battlefield. She did a number on you. Izuna chuckled, pointing to his now missing arm. Indeed, Madara mused. I may have underestimated her. I didn't expect her to use the 8 inner gates battle formation. Tell me, Izuna, what do you know about the Hyuga clan and the Byakugan? Few days later, Hinata was healed by Zetsu and her chakra sealed once more. She was back to step 1, being trapped in a room with the only visits being Izuna with her food. However, that provided her with time to think. Time to think about her new eyes and specifically her dead bone pulse bloodline. That surely explained all the pain she had been feeling in the last weeks. But the question remained. What triggered her change? Naruto seemed to know, but then again, he knew everything. She heard a rustling outside of her room. Just in time, Hinata thought, as she expected Izuna to walk in with her meal. She was surprised when the door opened and Madara stepped inside, empty-handed. She watched carefully as Madara approached and placed a single finger on her forehead, breaking her chakra seal. Hinata felt her chakra returning and immediately stood up and ready for round 2. Madara for his part just stood still, watching her with amusement. You are free to go, Madara said, and she blinked. What? She asked. She must have heard wrong. You are free to go, Madara repeated, restraining to laugh at her stupefied face. Why? Hinata almost whined. You served your purpose, Madara answered and stepped out of the room. Hinata didn't wait for him to change his mind and immediately bolted out of the room. In a few short minutes she was long away from the Rain Village. And now I'm here, Hinata finished her tale and looked around the room, taking notice that mostly everyone was either gaping like a fish or staring blankly at her. She didn't blame them. It was quite the tale. Damn, Tobirama was the first to sum everyone's thoughts. Can we see it? Kushina asked and everyone leaned in, including Naruto. Hinata sighed and slowly opened her eyes and Naruto took a sharp breath. So you awakened it after all? Naruto smiled and Hinata nodded. Naruto looked at her eyes more carefully now. Her traditional white, pupilless eyes now had a light blue flower-like pattern. She blinked and the flower pattern disappeared, returning her eyes to the usual Byakugan state. To his surprise, he saw her hair returning to the old dark blue color. Well? Hinata asked, and everyone turned towards Naruto, waiting for an explanation. What do you know of this? You clearly knew I was going to awaken it, Hinata stated, and Naruto nodded. It never crossed my mind even for just a moment that you would awaken them, but when I did that scan on you I could see the eyes blossoming behind your Byakugan. The same way I could feel your own body adapting to its changes, just like mine did when I awakened my Rinnegan. Naruto began and everyone listened in. It's called Tensegan. Those eyes belong to Homura Utsutsuki, Naruto said, and everyone cringed their faces in confusion. Homura Utsutsuki was the twin brother of Hagoromo Utsutsuki, also known as the Sage of the Six Paths, Naruto said, and everyone stared in disbelief. How come you know all of this? Hashirama grumbled. When I met Hagoromo I saw a few of his memories, both growing up and with him as an adult. I knew that Homura possessed the Tensegan and wielded the Dead Bone Pulse as well. I guess all those abilities were dormant within the Hyuga clan and were triggered by Utsutsuki chakra, Naruto explained. And where did she get Utsutsuki chakra? Hashirama asked with curiosity. That would be my fault, Naruto sighed as everyone looked at him in confusion. I am Hagoromo's first transmigrant after all. Transmigrant? Hashirama furrowed his eyebrows. I don't know why you don't know this. You are Asura's transmigrant, Naruto said, making Hashirama's eyes twitch. Explain, Hashirama said, crossing his arms and taking a deep breath. Well, it's like this. You all know how chakra began, right? Naruto asked and everyone nodded. Hagoromo and Himura were the first users of chakra. But the thing was that their chakra was extremely powerful. The same thing with Hagoromo's children, Indra and Asura. What happened was that when they died, be it a natural death or not, their powerful chakra remained stuck in this world, waiting patiently for a specific individual to be born. In Hashirama's case it was Asura's chakra. When Hashirama was born, Asura's chakra latched onto you, giving you unnatural powers compared to most shinobi. I suspect Madara was Indra's transmigration. That would explain why he was the only who could match against you. The thing is that this chakra, while giving you increased powers, only latches onto a person who will develop specific personality traits. In Asura's case, it was his will and desire for peace and love. You said where, Hashirama said softly. When the transmigrant dies, this chakra of the original one detaches and waits patiently for the next newborn who will become the next transmigrant. In a way, you can call this reincarnation of past lives. Naruto finished and everyone had their jaws on the ground. And you weren't exactly born when I resurrected you, were you? Naruto chuckled and Hashirama nodded slowly. Sasuke was Indra's transmigrant, Naruto said out of nowhere. How do you know that? Hinata asked with curiosity. I could remember his chakra after my talk with Hagoromo, Naruto explained. Anyway, since I'm Hagoromo's transmigration, I am, in fact, Utsutsuki Naruto. And like my clan name, my chakra is Utsutsuki in nature, Naruto explained. That still doesn't explain how she awakened those eyes, Tobirama argued. It's because we became intimate, Naruto said and cleared his throat as everyone stared at him. You mean, she awakened the eyes because you had sex with her, Jiraiya said before bursting in laughter. This is good, he said between breaths. Explain please, Hinata muttered. Why do you think the whole sex only after marriage began? Naruto asked rhetorically. Because even today, sex is referred as something more than physical. In some cultures, having sex is like a ritual for the sharing of energies. That is why you awaken the Tensegan, Naruto explained. I bet you share your chakra with her a lot, Jiraiya grinned, wiggling his eyebrows, making everyone facepalm. Jiraiya, have some decency, Tsunade yelled, smacking his head. Now what? Hinata asked. Now we train your new abilities, Naruto grinned and Hinata smiled. She was back home, Senju compound. How long have they been like that? Tobirama asked, gazing into both Naruto and Hinata, who sat on the ground, in perfect lotus position facing each other. They were looking intently into each other's eyes without making any single movement, not even the slightest of twitches. The odd thing was that they both had their Jutsus activated. Naruto had his Mingekyu turned on while Hinata was using her newly awakened eyes. Her light blue eyes clashed against the blood red of the Sharingan. A couple of hours, Itachi replied, giving a side glance to the sitting couple. I see, Tobirama replied flatly and sat down at the table, his eyes never leaving them. How long do you think it has been for them? He asked, noticing a small drop of sweat running down Naruto's face. Time perception changes between users. In my Tsukuyomi, 1 second in real life means 24 hours inside my Genjutsu world. As for Naruto, I can't but wonder. I'm severely restrained by my average chakra levels, unlike him, Itachi replied evenly. But, both of them have been going at it for hours. They didn't even had lunch. If he shares the same skill as you do with the Tsukuyomi, then both of them have been in there for years, Tobirama said, quickly doing the math in his head. Years in a couple of hours. Tobirama was lost in his thoughts when he heard a groan and noticed Naruto had closed his eyes and took a deep breath. Both Naruto and Hinata stood, popping a few joints for all the time they sat on the ground, stiff as boards. He looked towards Hinata and saw her hair shifting back to her dark blue color. Tobirama looked carefully at Hinata. Her posture seemed different. No. It was different. But that could have been for sitting on the ground so many hours. His eyes trailed back to Naruto, who was already at the table, munching on anything he could grab. He took a small red and felt his chakra levels were near the bottom. Naruto had expended all of his chakra in that speed training session. Tobirama wondered. How long? He asked, narrowing his eyes at Naruto. I didn't just use my chakra, Naruto replied with a crooked smile. Tobirama groaned once more at the nickname. Naruto had taken to call him Tobi for short, no matter how many times he reminded Naruto that Tobi was once the mask of Fugaku. We emptied Kurama as well, Naruto explained, and Tobirama's eyes widened ever so slightly. If they use the chakra by Ju, then 2 years, Naruto said, and saw Tobirama's jaw drop as well. Itachi's. You have been stuck in your mind for 2 years? Tobirama asked in disbelief. 2 years. That was insane. The amount of chakra required would be staggering. No wonder they drained the Kyuubi. 2 years, 1 month and 24 days, Hinata informed him while Tobirama just shook his head. What did you do in there for so long? Tobirama asked. Mostly training, Hinata replied, munching happily on an apple. I see, Itachi answered neutrally. Anything we need to know? Nope, Naruto grinned. However, Hashirama is no longer the second strongest on our group, Naruto replied, and Tobirama raised his head, looking at Hinata, who looked exactly the same. Then again, for him and Itachi it was only a few hours. Really? Tobirama asked with suspicion. His brother was filled to the brim with chakra, not mention his Makuten bloodline. Indeed, Hinata answered but said nothing more. Let them wonder, she added in thought. And you? Tobirama asked towards Naruto. What have you been doing in there for 2 years? Preparing for Madara. Next day, Hokage's office. He won't like it, Tsunade commented. She stood next to the windows, hands behind her back as she gazed into the village. The sun coming up in the horizon. I know, Hinata replied softly. How do you know Naruto-kun won't like it? Shizune asked with a frown. She, Hinata and Tsunade were the only ones in the Hokage's office. Even the Yonbu were ordered to leave. What we are trying is dangerous and Naruto-kun will know it, Hinata answered with a sigh. But he will understand. We just can't progress any further without him. A single sample requires our absolute attention and take weeks to grow. If we want it ready for the war we need more time, or Naruto's abilities, Hinata explained and waited for Tsunade to answer. Find Tsunade's side and defeat. Just, ease him into it. You know how he gets with the whole war and peace things, Tsunade explained, and Hinata nodded in reply, taking the authorization form from the Hokage. Another thing, Tsunade said, stopping Hinata from leaving the office. Don't take too long. I need you and Kakashi to get ready for the cage meeting. Hinata frowned at Tsunade's words. You are not taking Naruto-kun? She asked. Things are tense between us and Iwagakure, Tsunade sighed, closing her fists behind her back. Naruto is too proud for his own good. Actually, I think you should reconsider, Hinata replied instantly, making Tsunade turn away from window and look at Hinata with a raised eyebrow. He and the Tsuchiki jar at each other's throats. I can't allow that to happen if we are to be allied in this war, Tsunade informed her. That is why I think you should heavily reconsider not taking Naruto-kun with you. I spent 2 years with him in our mines and he's humbled quite a bit, Hinata explained. Really? Tsunade asked with amusement. And is that an impartial observation? One thing you should understand about Naruto-kun is that he had never lost before, Hinata began softly. We both had rough times growing up. Naruto-kun pushed himself to his limits every single day to reach the level he is today. It is normal that he takes pride in his abilities since he worked hard for them. Although the early years were hard, Naruto-kun was always had a talent for the shinobi arts. He learned jutsus fairly quickly thanks to his eyes, and his daijutsu and genjutsu grew just as easily. The problem with such talent and power was that he never lost a single battle, Hinata said, and Tsunade raised an eyebrow in surprise. He was never once defeated in battle and he was never outsmarted either. Then came Madara, who kidnapped me right from beneath his nose. And to make things worse, Naruto couldn't find me afterwards. It shook him. It made him feel weak, frail and hopeless for the first time. I think he learned a lot of humbleness from that, Hinata finished explained, and Tsunade remained silent. That certainly explained all the anger he had, Tsunade muttered to herself. She looked up towards her apprentice and mused silently in thought. Alright, Tsunade conceded, shaking her head at the bright smile on the girl's face. One question though, Tsunade said, and Hinata nodded quite quickly. What exactly were you doing for 2 years in your dreamscapes? Tsunade asked with curiosity. Mostly developing my eyes so I don't have surprises during the war, Hinata shrugged her shoulders. I had time to think about my researches and couple other things, but what you learned, don't you need to train it with your actual body? Tsunade mused out loud. Not really, Hinata replied. Mine and Naruto's body are at our physical peak at the moment. The absolute peak of the human body is around 25, so we just have to wait until there. The things I learned in our minds can easily be applied in the real world without placing too much strain on my eyes, Hinata explained, and Tsunade chuckled softly. Care to share? Tsunade asked shrewdly. Apparently I'm Hamura's transmigrant. Due to Naruto's chakra being injected into my system, it forced my eyes to awaken. Hence the white hair and the bones thing, Hinata shrugged her shoulders. She didn't mind her new eyes, but she was still wrapping her mind about the bones. I see, Tsunade replied, walking towards the chair and leaning backwards. Anyway, get going and come back with him once you are finished, Tsunade said. Hinata bowed and walked out of the office. That girl, Tsunade chuckled. She never ceases to amaze me indeed, Shizune giggled in reply. With Naruto. Are you serious? Naruto asked in disbelief mixed with surprise and shock. He was staring at the scarecrow of a shinobi standing lazily in front of him. "Anko? You are marrying Anko? I thought all you had was a fling?" He chucked in disbelief. Now Naruto. Anko may be a bit eccentric and crazy, twisted, sadistic, and did I mention crazy? Shall I go on? Naruto asked with amusement. "I'm a simple man." Naruto Kakashi sighed and closed his book. "I see boobs. I married them," Kakashi replied, and Naruto's sweat dropped. "Well, good luck then," Naruto said after recovering. "You are gonna need it by marrying that crazy woman." Naruto laughed in thought. Both Naruto and Kakashi stiffened slightly but quickly relaxed when they felt a spike of chakra. They watched as water started swirling on the previous dry ground and Hinata materialized herself in front of them. Hina-chan. Naruto ran up to her and proceeded to whine about Kakashi getting married with Anko. "Congratulations, Kakashi-sensei," Hinata said happily while Kakashi nodded in appreciation. "Unlike certain blondes." "Come now, Hinata. We are all jounin'. Kakashi or Kakashi-senpai is fine," Kakashi answered, and Hinata nodded before turning towards Naruto. "I need your help." "Are you busy?" Hinata asked, and Naruto shook his head, wondering what Hinata wanted. "Good. Come with me," Hinata said and motioned for him to follow. "See ya, Kakashi." Hinata bowed slightly as both walked off. Konoha Hospital. "So, where are we going?" Naruto asked as both of them stepped into the hospital through the front doors. "You will see." Hinata grinned and Naruto followed, wondering what would require of him in the hospital. He always hated hospitals. That damn smell of high-powered cleaners. Nonetheless, he followed her. She made her way through the hospital blocks with practiced ease. Soon enough, Hinata turned on a corner that led to a dead end. Naruto raised an eyebrow as she kept walking until she stood but a few feet from the wall. Naruto's jaw dropped when Hinata placed a hand on the wall and immediately a small seal flared to life, glowing intermittently for a few seconds. Naruto watched as a small outline appeared in the wall, the size of a simple door. "Come, Naruto-kun," Hinata said, breaking Naruto from his stupor. Hinata pushed the wall and it retreated backwards without much effort, sliding to the side. Naruto stepped into the room with trepidation. "Where the hell are we going?" Naruto was so lost in his thoughts that he didn't notice a simple elevator standing in the middle of the room. A single Anbu stood next to the doors in perfect position, arms by the side of his body and straight posture. Where are we?" Naruto asked with no concealed curiosity. It was a small miracle he managed to hold it so far. "We are nearly there. I will tell you when we arrive," Hinata replied and entered the pin code, and the doors opened with a swoosh sound. Hinata stepped inside and Naruto was about to enter as well when the Anbu placed a single arm to stop his movement. "Lord Senju does not have clearance to enter this section," the Anbu replied sharply, and Naruto turned to Hinata, who blushed in realization. "I'm sorry." Here Hinata stepped out of the elevator and quickly pulled out the form she received from Tsunade. The Anbu looked through the form seconds before it burst into flames and was turned into ash. "You may proceed," the Anbu replied neutrally and returned to his posture. "Thanks," Naruto replied awkwardly and stepped into the elevator. The doors closed and he turned towards Hinata expectantly. She felt his eyes on her but ignored him. They were nearly there. Naruto could feel the chakra signatures on the surface getting dimmer and dimmer as the elevator continued on downwards. Suddenly, the elevator stopped and Naruto looked forward as the doors opened and he blasted with white light. "Welcome, Naruto-kun, to Orochimaru's greatest creation," Hinata said, but Naruto was barely able to register her words. There was so much white in front of him. White walls, white lights on the ceiling. "Orochimaru." Naruto finally processed Hinata's words. "What do you mean?" he asked as he was led by Hinata through the halls. Naruto looked through the clear glass walls and saw many tables filled with vials and other equipment. He recognized some of the equipment from the basic knowledge he had of biology. They kept walking and took a sharp right until they entered another section of the place. This room had large tanks filled with some type of liquid. Something was floating inside the tanks, connected by tubes to the exterior. Naruto suddenly stopped and placed a hand on Hinata's shoulders. Hinata turned backwards and noticed Naruto's face. "Explain," Naruto said more harshly than he intended, but Hinata didn't seem to mind. It seemed that she expected it. In fact, Orochimaru was the founder of all of this. Hinata began, waving her arms. "This is a secret division of the Leaf for biological weaponry research. These facilities are perhaps the closest kept secret in the village. I doubt that even Danzo knew of this place, but with his connections it is unclear. This structure has living facilities for the active personnel and support staff to reduce the trips to the surface and lower risk of exposure." "Remember that little laboratory you found years ago during your D-rank mission?" Hinata asked, and Naruto nodded. "That was actually an emergency entrance to this place. It would seem Orochimaru had repurposed that location for his own plans. When he was caught, I think he didn't have time to properly clean up everything. That would explain how you found so much," Hinata mused. He may have overstood his boundaries, but he was a genius, and one of the leading minds in genetic engineering. This was his life's work before he went crazy with the whole immortality thing, Hinata explained, and Naruto nodded, following her along the corridors. It was supposed to be a dawn of a new age. All the chakra in the world is meaningless when a simple virus can wipe out a village and leave its wealth intact, Hinata explained, and Naruto was already frowning. "Isn't chakra enough?" Naruto sighed. "Does Konoha really need more weapons?" "But you are wrong though," Naruto thought sadly. "If you understood chakra like I do, you would know that chakra is the only absolute." "I understand how you feel, Naruto," Hinata replied softly. "But don't forget that this village is the military power of the Fire Nation. And while Konoha always had powerful shinobi, we never had the largest armies nor the biggest diversity in bloodlines. However, we always strived in medicine. I suppose I shouldn't be too surprised. But I thought shinobi were resistant to virus and other diseases?" Naruto commented out loud. "True," Hinata agreed. "People with active chakra networks have stronger immune systems, so they don't get sick with standard diseases. But we are still humans, Naruto. Even we get sick and die if the disease is strong enough," Hinata explained as both of them stopped in front of a door. "I still don't see how I can help. My genetics knowledge is a little rusty," Naruto joked until Hinata pointed forward. Naruto looked at where they stopped in front of a steel door. "Virus," Naruto read the letters on the door. "Viral Investigation and Research Unit Section," Hinata informed him as she stepped forward. The doors opened automatically. "This way," Hinata called, and Naruto followed until they stood in front of large cylindrical tanks, very similar to the ones he saw on another section of this place. "Is that what I think it is?" Naruto asked, observing the white blob floating in the liquid. "White Zetsu," Hinata confirmed. Naruto watched the blob in front of him for confirmation. It was indeed a white Zetsu, or at least a few chunks of one. "Ever since the Kumo invasion we have been working on several ways to quickly neutralize them." "Actually, that would be a brilliant idea," Naruto replied with a surprised face. "Madara's army would be entirely composed by white Zetsu. If we could find a poison or something that would target only them, we could dispatch of his army instantly," Naruto said, and Hinata nodded in reply. "There are a few snags, however," Hinata said, sitting on a nearby chair and powering on the computer and other equipment. Naruto leaned over Hinata to look at the monitor to watch an array of complex symbols and other stuff that held no meaning to him. "We are learning more every day, but I have to say that Zetsu clones are one work of art. They are essentially clones of Hashiramas, although their DNA is slightly different since they are not entirely human," Hinata explained, pointing towards the monitor which had a representation of a Zetsu body. "They possess nearly all the strengths of Hashirama. They carry the same powerful life force and his healing abilities as well. They are also heavily in tune with nature, being able to literally merge with any substance and allowing them to blend in easily and being virtually undetectable, even for powerful sensors like you and Tobirama," Hinata explained, pointing to several schematics, and Naruto nodded in understanding. "They can use the Makuten, although in a much smaller and weaker scale than Hashirama, thankfully," Hinata said, and Naruto sighed, rubbing his forehead. "I expected the Zetsu clones to be nothing but fodder," Naruto groaned. It would appear that Zetsu clones weren't as weak as expected. "The Kumo invasion was an eye-opener," Hinata nodded in agreement and returned to her explanation. "Since they aren't exactly human, they do not perform much of our bodily functions. They do not require food or even oxygen, instead they draw natural energy for sustenance. Since they draw energy from the earth itself, they do not tire, unlike us." Hinata bit her lip. Hinata replied and stood up, leading Naruto to another table. "Their bodies are very durable. Low-levels wounds will heal up immediately. To take them down you need extensive trauma, like decapitating them or blowing them to pieces." "What about their offensive abilities?" Naruto asked, looking backwards to the floating Zetsu on the tank. "Besides the Makuten, their offensive abilities are on the weaker side. Their only reliable ability seems being able to absorb chakra," Hinata said, and Naruto frowned at her words. "Like my Rinnegan?" "Not like that," Hinata shook her head. "They cannot negate ninjutsu attacks. However, they can latch onto a person and drain their chakra, and fairly quickly too if we are not careful." Naruto nodded, taking particularly attention to store all these little details. "So what do you need me for?" "I need your Rinnegan abilities. I need you to mature a couple of specimens so that we can try our creations on them," Hinata said, pointing to several vials on the fridge. They seemed to share the same color, but the labels identified the liquid with different strains. "Z virus?" Naruto asked with amusement. "Z for Zetsu. Not very original, but it will do," Hinata giggled while Naruto shook his head. He walked up to the tanks and placed a single hand on the glass. The Zetsu parts began shaking and suddenly snapped to their right positions. The leg piece went to the bottom while the head stayed at the top. Small white tendrils burst from the head and quickly latched on the remaining body parts, pulling the pieces together, mending the flesh back together into one whole body. Yellow eyes snapped open as Naruto removed his hand. The Zetsu snarled, gulping the liquid, but he didn't seem to mind. The Zetsu punched the tank, but the glass didn't even vibrate. Reinforced glass. They are perfectly safe in there, Hinata commented as she drained the liquid inside the tank. Hinata walked back towards the computer and started typing. Warning, warning, Naruto heard from the speakers. Z-virus protocol initialized. Dispersing, B-strain. Naruto turned back to the tank and saw nothing happening. The Zetsu was still trying his best to break the glass until he suddenly stopped and started convulsing in pain. His skin started blistering as the Zetsu trashed inside the glass cage until he collapsed to the bottom, completely still. Hinata was looking at the report from the computer when the Zetsu opened his eyes and stood up. With a smirk, all the blisters healed and he began trying to break the glass again. B-strain simulation, failure, the system reported. Oh well, Hinata sighed and stood up. Not like I expected to work in the first try. That would have been too good. Do you know what makes them obey Madara's command so blindly? Naruto asked with curiosity. Oh, I know that, face, Hinata stated with a smirk. What are you plotting inside that devious mind of yours? She asked, watching Naruto remain obvious to her question. I was thinking. What if we could somehow modify this Zetsu? Naruto pointed to the tank behind him. To follow our orders? Then we could simply form our own army of Zetsu and pit it against Madara's. And should we lose, we could always make some more, Naruto explained, but Hinata frowned. I don't think it will work. We just got to work on the Zetsu and have so much more to find out. I don't think it would be wise to risk building an army only for it to turn against us, Hinata explained. You are right. Anyway, how many clones do you need? Naruto asked, looking at the 4 others' tanks. 1 is enough for now. When I manage to end this one, I'll let you know. In the meantime, we need to get ready for the cage meeting, Hinata explained, placing her lab coat down. I don't think Bachan will let me go, Naruto frowned. No worries. I talked to her and convinced her to give you a second chance, Hinata replied, and Naruto looked up. In a flash he was next to Hinata, hugging her. Thanks, Hinata-chan, Naruto cheered, spinning her while she laughed. Did I tell you how much I love you? Not today, she pouted. Senju compound. Most of the people living under the roof of the Senju compound were gathered in the living room. Naruto had just geared up and was waiting for Tsunade to arrive so they could departure for the final meeting before the war. No matter how times change, war always finds its way back, Hashirama said sadly, looking down into the floor. All the battles I fought, the union of the clans into villages, and where we go again. This war is different, Naruto replied with a smile. Hashirama looked up with hollowed eyes. There is no point in war, Naruto. You will understand it, sooner or later, Hashirama sighed. He could already feel the nature weeping for the loss of life that was to come. You are wrong, Grandpa. It is true that most wars are pointless, but this one is special. For the first time since the birth of chakra, all the clans, all the villages, all shinobi are united against a common enemy. No one wishes to sacrifice their freedom, Naruto said seriously. For the first time in history we are united for more than greed, more than personal gain. This is for our future. Good speech, Hashirama snickered, but his words were honest. You should relay that message to whoever becomes the commander of the forces on the field. Naruto turned to see Kurama approaching the room, followed by his 7 siblings. The only Baijiu missing was the one still inside back in Kumo. That can't be good, Naruto thought with anticipation. We want to fight by your side, Son Goku said, stepping forward and standing next to Kurama. Absolutely not, Tobirama replied sharply. We are going up against Madara. A single glance from his eyes and you become nothing more than puppets. We deserve to fight, Mutatabi replied harshly. You are not fighting for your future alone. Should you fail, we will also be enslaved. Naruto for his part was silent, pondering what to do. Don't tell me you are considering this? Tobirama asked incredulously, turning to look at Naruto. They are right. They deserve to fight for their freedom as well, Naruto replied, and the Baijiu nodded. However, Naruto continued, stopping any rant. I can't allow you in the battlefield. Tobi is right. It is a chance I cannot take, Naruto replied sadly while most of the Baijiu growled in anger. And who are you to stop us? Son Goku growled, his tails waving menacingly. You are not father, he spat. I know, Naruto answered with a small smile. But it is my job to protect you. Son Goku closed his mouth and looked at the floor. But he was still too proud to back down. It would appear they reached an impasse. Sensing the tension growing in the room, Hinata stepped forward. May I offer a compromise? Hinata asked and everyone turned towards her. Why don't you seal the Baijiu inside a vessel of their choosing? Hinata offered and everyone's eyes widened. When a Baijiu is inside a host they are not affected by genjutsu, and this way they can join forces and help in the war, Hinata explained, and Naruto nodded, pondering very seriously this hypothesis. I agree, Matatabi replied instantly and jumped in the air, landing on Hinata's shoulders. I want her, Matatabi purred while Hinata for her part patted her head in acceptance. I can go with that, Naruto said and turned towards Son Goku and the others. Will you agree? Son Goku stayed silent for a few moments as he turned backwards to talk with the remaining free Baijiu, Sanbi, Kokuo and Seiken. Since it appeared Matatabi had already agreed and chosen her vessel, they whispered for a few moments until they seemed to reach a consensus. We agree on the condition we are treated fairly and be allowed to roam free. You know that I won't allow anyone to use you purely as weapons of mass destruction. Pick your vessel. If they agree, then I will seal you and allow you to participate on the war, Naruto explained, and Son Goku nodded. He started walking around the room, sniffing anyone in range. I want your mate, Son Goku said towards Tobirama, who turned stiff as a board. Of all the people in the world he managed to choose a cage, Naruto muttered. Oonoki is not going to like this one bit, Naruto snickered, thinking back to the old leader. Oonoki really wanted the Baijiu back, and now Naruto was going to seal a Baijiu that once belonged to Iwa into the cage of another village. I want you, Isabu said, walking towards Tobirama. I sense your chakra nature will go along with mine very well, Isabu explained. Naruto looked at Tobirama for an answer, but the man simply shrugged his shoulders, but Naruto could swear he saw a smile tugging the corner of his lips. And you? Naruto asked, turning towards the remaining Baijiu, Seiken and Kokuo. I sense we are very much the same, Itachi-san. I would like to be bonded with you, Kokuo said, much to Itachi's surprise. I thank you for choosing me, Itachi replied in bowed in kind. I want Hashirama, Seiken replied meekly. Of course, Hashirama replied joyfully. I guess it's settled, Naruto said as Tsunade come into the room. I will seal you after we come back from the meeting. Seal what and who? Tsunade asked, narrowing her eyes at Naruto, who gulped under her gaze. You know, Kurama began, drawing the attention to him. Father said that someday we would all be together. I just never thought it would be quite like this, Kurama laughed. At the cage meeting. I apologize for my words during the last meeting, Tsuchikage-sama, Naruto said, bowing his head. Anaki opened his mouth to reply, but no words came out. If he was expecting anything from the spawn of the yellow flash, that this was not. It certainly wasn't, Anaki thought in mild disbelief, seeing the blonde in front of him. He looked around to see faces of shock and surprise amongst everybody in the room. Did you put him to this? Oonoki hissed towards Tsunade, who also was shocked. No, she gasped. I see, Oonoki said neutrally, contemplating the young shinobi in front of him. Stop bowing, boy. Show some pride, he snarled suddenly. Naruto rose but kept his face empty, waiting patiently for Anaki's answer. Why did you apologize? Anaki asked, narrowing his eyes in suspicion. I overstood my boundaries during the last meeting. It was not my intention to coerce you to relinquish control over the Baijiu by force, Naruto replied, looking somewhat downcast. I still have and will always have pride. I bowed, not by lack of it, but as sign of respect and apology. And where do you stand now about the Baijiu? Anaki asked, and everyone in the room stiffened, waiting for the response. I am sorry. But giving you the Baijiu is not something I will do, Naruto frowned but replied nonetheless. I see, Anaki said, inhaling sharply. Everyone in the room tensed and waited for the old man to blow up once more. We are all shinobi, are we not? Naruto suddenly asked. Why must we force ourselves into endless fighting over land, money or even power? We could do so much more if we all stood together, Naruto explained seriously. War will only lead to our mutual destruction. I suppose I agree with you on that, Anaki replied, and everyone sighed in relief. I'm old, Naruto. Very old, Anaki said, referring to the blonde by his name for the first time. And I have seen more chaos, blood and death than even you. The attack of my forces during the last meeting was not my decision. As you know, I was under Madara's influence, so I am partial to blame for that mess. And I extend you my gratitude for sparing my men, Anaki said, and Naruto smiled, shaking Anaki's extended hand. Good. When this is all over, then we can talk properly, Anaki finished and sat down around the round table. Now Anaki began as the bodyguards also stood behind each of the cages. Let's show that bastard what happens when he messes with us, Anaki snarled, and Tsunade snickered internally. Some things never changed, Tsunade thought, casting a side glance at Naruto. She saw Hinata's hand discreetly come up and grasp Naruto's tightly, hidden behind the cover of the chair. Behind every great man stands an equally great woman, Tsunade thought with a smile, and turned back to focus on the meeting. We have confirmation that the smaller villages will also partake in this, Baki explained, pointing to several smaller countries in the elementals nations. Excellent, agreed. What news we have from Madara? Madara is holed up in the rain village, Tsunade being explaining. It is unclear if the rain shinobi are by his side or if they are simply being coerced or manipulated in his forces. Mei asked, intertwining her hands together. His army will be comprised of Zetsu clones. Their number is uncertain as of now, but we can expect the high tens of thousands, Tsunade explained, and everyone grimaced at the numbers. Here is all the information we have on their strength, Tsunade said, tossing a thick folder into the table. My suggestion is sending bulky ninjutsu users to the front lines with long-range cover. Zetsu are not dangerous, but they are hard to take down. Tsunade informed as they quickly read the report from the leaf. You are trying to develop BOWs against them? Mei asked with a raised eyebrow. BOW? Naruto whispered to Hinata. Bioorganic weapon, Hinata replied, and Naruto nodded. Yes, but progress has been difficult. They have an advanced healing factor, Tsunade frowned. When can he start moving in? I asked gruffly, leaning on his chair. My army is ready. We should move in a week, Hanaki offered, as did the other Kijis. If I may? Naruto said, stopping the chatter. Why not move tomorrow in a surprise attack? Catch Madara by surprise and end this before he can properly set up? You do know that the more time we take, the more Zetsu clones he can make, Naruto explained. And how do you propose we move our armies across the elemental nations in less than 24 hours? I asked with amusement. Leave it to me, Naruto replied. If I could land all of our shinobi at the front gates of the Rain Village, would we be ready for war? Naruto asked, straining the word ready. While a surprise attack was good, if the troops weren't properly equipped, then it could easily backfire. I turned to the other nation's leader and they all quickly agreed that it would be possible to get their shinobi battle ready in a few hours. It is possible. Now explain how you can move 80,000 shinobi from multiple places in the whole world in under a day? I asked, crossing his arms in somewhat disbelief. Not a day. I can move them all in under a second, Naruto explained, and silence ensued. I severely doubt even your famous Hiraishin can achieve that? Aniki replied, stroking his beard. The Hiraishin was designed to move only the user through space. Moving large amounts of mass takes a lot of chakra, Naruto explained and stepped forward, picking the world map. A few years ago I designed a seal that would open a tunnel between 2 points in space and stabilize this link, keeping it open indefinitely. My technique works by creating a doorway between 2 points, Naruto said, folding the map such that the Leaf Village and the Rain Village touched. The shinobi simply need to cross this door and they will be in the Rain Village. In fact, this very technique is active in our Senju compound and linked to the Hokage Tower. The space-bridged Tsunade said, her eyes lighting up in recognition. Exactly. How much energy does it take to work? Mei asked, folding her hands together. Actually not that much, Naruto explained, placing the map back on the table. It's like friction. You need more force to put an objection in motion than to actually sustain that motion. Only someone with large reserves can kickstart the bridge. After that, even again, and that sustain the bridge open for hours. Naruto finished his explanation and stepped back, waiting for the leader to make their decision. The final verdict seemed to be the same. Send word to our villages. Tell them to get ready for transport, I shouted to the shinobi in charge of delivering messages. By the way, Mifune began, retrieving something from his pouch. I took the liberty of designing a new headband for all of us, Mifune explained, tossing the headband across the table. The Rikage quickly caught the headband and turned it around, displaying the kanji for shinobi, branded on the metal. Anna grunted with a smile. I suppose we are, with Madara Madara-sama, Zetsu called, rising from the ground. Madara did not acknowledge him, but Zetsu didn't seem surprised. I have some interesting information. Get on with it, Madara said, overlooking the cloning of Zetsus. It appears that the allied shinobi forces moved their timetable. They will strike tomorrow, Zetsu said. Madara turned backwards to look at the white clone with surprise. Interesting, Madara said, scratching his chin with a pensive look. Then we will move forward as well. How many samples have you found until now? Madara asked, leading the clone to another room filled with scrolls. A few, Zetsu answered and rose fully from the ground, bringing several rotten corpses with him. I also have samples from all the previous Akatsuki members. I took precautions should they ever be defeated, Zetsu explained. Good. I also heard what happened to my clan. I suppose you don't have any samples from where the Uchihas around? Madara asked, never looking up from a particular scroll that was used to bring him back. Easy enough, Madara read the instructions with more care as he prepared a massive Edo Tensei jutsu. I have one that I think you might enjoy. He was Fugaku's younger son who perished a few months ago, Zetsu said with a smirk. If he was anything like his father, then forget it, Madara replied and started waving through hand seals. He was a lost kid, easily manipulated, but he was strong nonetheless. A mid-S rank shinobi with a Mangekyo Zetsu explained as Madara finished. Kushios, Edo Tensei, Madara said, slamming his hand on the scrolls. The Zetsu clones he had on the room started becoming covered with leaves until they started taking different shapes. HN. They will do, Madara grunted, looking at the reincarnated shinobi in front of him, waiting patiently for orders. Fugaku seemed particularly hateful towards Madara. I suppose he will do as well. The Edo Tensei is such a great jutsu, is it not? Madara asked with amusement. A dark smile adorning his face. That's it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and follow me on my other social media accounts. Anime God here, and I'm signing off.